Which celebrity's death really stunned you? Heath Ledger. Anthony Bourdain. Carrie Fisher and then subsequently her mother. Despite her known battle with addiction, it still took me by surprise. All of the big ones already mentioned here, of course, Phil Hartman. Robin Williams. But I rarely see John Ritter in these lists. And that was a huge shocker. He was so young. It was sudden and unexpected. And by all accounts he was a great guy. And he died on his young daughter's birthday. There was that one time when a Redditor made a post asking why Stephen Hawking wasn't dead yet, and he was reported dead the next morning. I think and everyone reading that post was stunned. Anton Yelchin. I always forget that the universe randomly and unceremoniously snuffed him out. Same for a lot of the names on this list. Shit sucks. Mr. Rogers. Scrolled this entire thing. And while I agree with the majority of these, I was shocked that no one mentioned Bernie Mac. While Michael Jackson's death hit me hardest, I still vividly remember hearing and not believing that Bernie Mac was dead. Robin Williams' death hit me pretty hard. He was a legend to me. And all the problems he must have dealt with without anyone to help, it makes me feel guilty and depressed. But I believe that he's happier now and in a much better place. Rip Robbie XX. Brittany Murphy. Alan Rickman for me. Eddie Van Halen. Grant Imahara. Came out of nowhere. Edit. Everyone seems to be exactly as torn up about Imahara as me. We'll miss you forever. Grant. Christina Grimmie. She wasn't the biggest celebrity, but at the time I was just getting into her music and listening to her covers on YouTube a lot. I don't watch The Voice, but her covers on that show were really great. When I found out she had been shot and killed by a deranged fan, it was truly shocking. She was so young. Only 22 with her whole life ahead of her. I still can't believe it. Bill Paxton. Watched him succeed from small parts. Terminator 2. And True Lies to Twister and Tombstone and Big Love. Just hard to believe. Edited. It's Terminator 1, not 2, sorry for the confusion. Chris Cornell. John Candy. I know he was a big guy. But he was also just such a genuine teddy bear. And his movies are comedy gold. Alan Rickman. I was torn apart for weeks over it. I fell in love with him in Sense and Sensibility, and then again as Severus Snape. He seemed like such an amazing man. Cameron Boyce. I watched him on Disney shows throughout my childhood, and knowing that he was fine one minute and dead the next was hard. Phillip Seymour Hoffman. Terry Pratchett. I actually cried at my desk at work that day. I didn't even try to hide it. That one is like a triple whammy for me. Because he was my favorite author. He wasn't young, but he wasn't super old, so I wasn't ready for it yet. And because when I told my dad, who also loved him, he said, "He was so young though. He's my age." And it kind of rattled me to realize that people my dad's age were already dying. Because I kind of low-key thought my dad would outlive everyone, and suddenly I had to realize that he wouldn't. Uncle Phil. Patrick Swayze. Really sad to see his body just waste away. Phil Hartman. Natasha Richardson. My HS science teacher died the same week and in the same way. Freddie Mercury was a shock. He had only announced that he had AIDS the day before. I don't think anyone expected him to die so quickly. Rick Mayall. Fuck, I miss that guy. Edit. A very special thank you to you, Kitty Kills, for my first ever gold. I was a teenager when Kurt Cobain died. It stunned and affected all of us kids lost in that crazy age of life. Dolores O'Riordan. That made me feel my age. Steve Irwin. Chester Bennington. George Carlin. Naya Rivera for sure. The whole situation of her going for a swim in a rough lake with her toddler son just felt so strange at the time. Chris Farley. He was so young and was at the height of his career. I loved him on SNL and his movies. Probably the first celebrity death that really affected me. Anton Yelchin. Such a bullshit death. Gilda Radner. Only time I got teary-eyed over the death of a celebrity. She was my favorite comedienne. Tom Petty. Chadwick Boseman. It was very sudden and without any indication that he was sick. It seemed I'd watched 21 Bridges recently and I'd heard him interviewed by Simon Mayo for Wittertainment, and he was so eloquent and intelligent with a vitality that seemed like he had a lot more to give. As someone who really likes Avicii. Showing my age. But Freddie Prinze. He was a hero to me as a little kid, and it blew my mind that someone so talented and funny could kill themselves. I still think of him and Jack Albertson on Chico and the Man. Deleted. David Bowie. Black Star was touching. Anthony Bourdain. I was drunk on a Tokyo subway when I found out. And I responded loudly. Mitch Hedberg. I used to love Mitch Hedberg. I still do. But I used to. Harold Ramis. Also George Michael on fucking Christmas. Michael Jackson too. Aaliyah. Still, it's been 19 years but she had so much promise. Chadwick Boseman too. MCA Beastie Boys far too young. Felt like I knew him. OBVS never met. Spoke to or conversed in any way. But was gutted. Selena. So fucking talented. River Phoenix. Keith Flint. Being an avid fan of The Prodigy for years and then waking up one morning to find out that he took his own life was a huge punch in the gut for me. And even though it's been over a year, it still hasn't quite sunk in that he's gone forever and that I never got to see The Prodigy live when he was still here. Neil Peart. It was so unexpected, and it really sucks that he never really had any time to enjoy his retirement. Douglas Adams. I wasn't ready for it at all. And I don't think anyone knew he was dying or anything. There were also ones like Terry Pratchett and Christopher Hitchens that you knew were coming because they had terminal illnesses that were well known for long before they died. But the actual news still came as a shock anyway. Stephen Hillenburg. The inevitability of ALS manifesting in him only added to the horrible news. Billy Mays. Chris Benoit. As a wrestling fan, I liked Benoit, and had followed him for quite some time. His death was sudden. And then the details started coming out. So not only did us fans have the sudden grief loss to process, we then started having to process the grisly details and that the person we admired, or at least, cheered for, went out a villain. A lot to process in a short amount of time. So many hit me hard. But if really think about it, Jim Henson was the one that shook me to my core. I was young. And my favorite movie was Labyrinth. I grew up an avid fan of Sesame Street, The Muppets, and Star Wars. He had just come out with a variety show that was so good. His death felt like it came out of nowhere. And the timing of it felt like the death of wonder and childhood. I still get a catch in my throat when I think about it. Anthony Bourdain. He's one of the few celebrities I gave a crap about. I know he battled depression for a long time, but it still hurt. The double header of David Bowie and my hero, Leonard Cohen, in the same year. With Prince in the middle of those. Devastating. Especially with David Bowie. As I'd spent the whole weekend listening to Black Star, which had come out on the Friday. Only to discover his death on the Monday. Me and my friends got very drunk that night. And found many an impromptu Bowie night. I'll always cherish the memory of being absolutely trashed in North London, dancing to Young Americans and crying arm in arm with my friends. Dolores O'Riordan, lead singer of the Cranberries. It's just the last thing that I'd have expected. Kobe. I never was a fan, but it really drove home that anyone can die in a shit way and money and fame have nothing to do with it. I think it really made him human to a lot of people. Not to mention the little girl and others who perished. Children aren't untouched by death either.